3,000 years of our history were snuffed out that day when the Black Legion descended upon our empire. Our empire, dubbed the Great Empire of Races, a prosperous realm known to all, was now on its knees. All we have known, all that we could see, were either burning or turned to ash. The lush golden field of the capital was no more. The great port cities that once hunted the mighty water beasts lay in ruin. The great green forest of the west, thought to be impenetrable, was now aflame. The last great holding of our empire, the great fortress of the north, the largest the world had ever seen, was under siege and on the brink of collapse. It was only a matter of time. 20,000 people were within these walls. If the walls were to crumble and the gates were to break, 20,000 corpses and a ruined bastion would be all that remained. Faced with this disaster, the people only had two choices: take their chances with the Black Legion or cross the Aesir, the treacherous northern mountain range. No explorer has ever been able to cross the Aesir. What lies beyond, no one knows. Many thought the journey to be impossible, but they had no choice. Surrendering would mean death. Crossing the Aesir would be treacherous, but it offers us a chance at survival. The night, under the cover of the darkness, 20,000 people of different races of the Empire fled towards the mountains. The soldiers in the bastion sallying out to face their death, aiming to give time and to distract the Black Legion from the escaping populace. This would be effective, though not for long, as the Black Legion defeated the last remaining soldiers and thirsted for a slaughter, only to find the bastion empty. Black Legion cavalry relentlessly hunted down the populace. Some were unfortunately caught and executed, but most made it to the foot of the mountain and began the treacherous climb. 6 long months. That was how long my people ventured the mountains. Many died from the bitter cold. Many more died from falling on hanging snow and hidden canyons. By the 3rd month, we had run out of food, save for the body of the dead. What we did enabled us to survive. By the end of the 4th month, we saw our paradise, a lush green forest that covered the land, plains as far as we could see, rivers and oceans shining like a blue jewel shimmering in the sun. 2 more months of scaling down the mountains, we have finally found our paradise. We were deceived. This land was no paradise. The forest is filled with monsters we have never seen before. The trees are alive, the plants poisonous, waiting for the opportunity to take your life. Our happiness turned to fear. The glowing rivers and oceans hid monsters of unimaginable proportions. There was no life here, only monsters, or so we thought. Out of the 2,000 people, more than 1,5000 died crossing the Aesir. More than 1,000 died after a week in this new land. Our hope was fading. Despair loomed over all of us. It seems our journey was for naught. The very next day, we awoke to a dead monster in front of our settlement. The monster was already gutted and cleaned. This monster was huge, almost 3x our size. Its tails were like a mace, armored from head all the way to its toes. We all stood in awe. Even if everyone in the settlement fought this monster, I doubt that we could even bring it down. The fact that the monster was beaten and prepared for us was mysterious. Is it a friend or a foe? Regardless, we now know that something out there has the ability to kill the monsters. The smell of the meat awakened a primal hunger. We had not eaten for days, surviving on scraps and what we could forage. We immediately butchered and cooked the monster, devouring it completely, not even leaving anything. At the edge of the forest, we left fruits and trinkets for our mysterious benefactor, a sign of thanks and appreciation. The children, mothers, and fathers' smiles were from ear to ear. That day was a blessing from the gods, for it was the first time the settlement was engulfed in laughter and happiness. But a question still stands. Who was the mysterious person who left the monster? And why? Once every week, the mysterious person would leave monster after monster. Hunters would examine each monster meticulously, studying their anatomy and learn how to kill it. Expeditions were now being organized to explore more about this land. Scouts and hunters ventured further into the forest, mapping the terrain and cataloging plants and monsters alike. We adapted to our surroundings. Hunters developed techniques and traps for monsters, and soon we would hunt them ourselves. Our settlement grew in size as our population grew. New families were formed, children were born into a world where survival no longer felt like a daily gamble. But the gifts are still arriving, each week without fail. This still intrigues us. The mysterious person still eludes us. Many had tried to catch the mystery person in the act, but none ever saw even a glimpse of him. We created a shrine in front of the gates for the mystery person, a simple stone pillar with an altar filled with offerings. Not long after we would see our benefactor. A stormy night, the rain lashing down and the wind howling through the trees, the sky was echoed with lightning and thunder, creating a thunderous symphony. All were either asleep or inside their homes. The guards heard a noise from the edge of the forest and peered over the walls. Red eyes covered the forest, glinting ominously in the dark. The guards rang the alarm. Soldiers, hunters, and civilians rushed towards the wall, ready to defend the inevitable attack. The red eyes grew closer. In the flashes of lightning, we could see shapes of monstrous beings charging towards the wall. The archers opened fire, scoring a few hits, but this did little to stop the monsters' advance. Some monsters scaled the walls and entered the settlement, while some were banging on the gate, aiming to break it. The gate would stand, but not for long. The monsters were fierce, killing many soldiers and hunters. But we were not to be underestimated. Some had scored kills among the tide of monsters. The battle raged on, with both suffering heavy losses. But the monsters were endless, and to make matters worse, the gate was broken. The monsters overwhelmed us. In this desperate struggle for survival, we saw them. We saw our benefactors for the very first time. They were small, smaller than us. Their skin, pale pink. They had 2 arms and legs. Monster heads' bones covered their face, while bits and pieces of bone armor and fur covered the rest of their body. They came from the forest, behind the monsters. One threw his spear at the monster. It pierced its fur and yelped in pain. The other monsters saw this and turned around, relieving some pressure on us. The monsters charged them, and a fight ensued. Monsters fell by the many with precise shots from long distances and coordinated attacks that could rival species with hive minds. The benefactors used projectiles, rocks, spears, hatchets, anything they could get their hands on. They retreated with speed deeper into the forest, where only sounds of battles echoed throughout the night. The dawn broke. We had won, but at a large cost. Red blood ran the muddy streets. Draconians, fairies, dwarves, felinus, and monsters lay dead or dying. Among the walls, gate, even the rooftops of houses. We gathered the dead and mourned the fallen. As we were finishing our rites, the benefactors came from the forest, their once white bone armor now covered in blood and mud. Now we saw them clearly, the ones who gave us a chance at survival. They walked towards us, behind them dragging the corpses of monsters, laying them in front of our walls. Their faces were grim and weary. Many of their people were injured and some missing limbs. Their leader held a large wolf head, its jaw snarling frozen. The leader, raising it above him. The leader of our settlement met the benefactor at the gates. The benefactor pulled out one of the huge fangs from the wolf's head, drilling a hole and passing a thread across it, creating a necklace before presenting it to our leader. The leader was hesitant to accept, but accepted nonetheless. The benefactor pulled the other fang and created another necklace and wore it himself. The benefactors cheered loudly, rivaling that of thunder, and started to butcher the remains of the monsters. The people were shocked as the benefactors, after butchering the monsters, entered our settlement. The benefactors tended to their injured in the square, setting up campfires and cooking the monsters, much to the amusement of the people. Without even realizing, accepting the necklaces meant that we were now friends, and according to their tradition, a feast was to be held in the name of friendship. The people were hesitant at first, as the benefactors sang and talked in a language we could not understand. But the atmosphere slowly pulled people into the party. The people pulled out meads, one that the benefactors had never seen before. They seemed awestruck in simple metal hatchets, spears, and the like. Everything was new to them: the wooden houses, metal armors, blacksmiths, etc. Due to this, we call them white hue mun, meaning white bone men in old tongue. The white hue mun stayed for the entire day. They traded fur for food and mead before setting off once again, disappearing into the forest. This was the origin of humans, our greatest ally and our fiercest foe, one that would eventually become the world's savior.